Welcome, everybody, to Alluserv's March webinar on Step Up Your Retail Healthcare Food Service. And by a show of hands, can everyone hear me? Click on, for any questions, you can type in your questions, and we will get back to you at the end of it. Just making sure everyone, making sure everyone can hear us. Okay. Okay, once again, welcome to Alluserv's webinar, Step Up Your Retail Healthcare Food Service. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to talk about interior design trends for retail healthcare, how to enhance that great patient and employee experience. My name is Marsha Diamond, and I am New Business Development with Alluserv. The takeaways today should be a new outlook on how to make a difference in your retail venue. As we go through this today, if there's any particular challenges you're going through, type them up and we will try to answer them at the end. And without further ado, let me get started. We have Nancy Inman today, Principal Interior Designer with iGroup, and has been with the company since its inception. She has an Associate of Fine Arts in Interior Design. Mrs. Inman has more than 15 years experience in her field. She has worked on many types of commercial design projects, but has an exceptionally concentrated knowledge of healthcare and food service design. In addition, we are lucky to have her today because she is experienced in the design of education and corporate facilities. She has also taught at Watkins College of Art and Design since 2002. And without further ado, I am going to pass it on to Nancy. Some housekeeping tips. We will be on Twitter. Alluserv will be throughout today during this conference. And in addition, if you have any questions and you raise your hand, I will unmute you to answer them as well. So let me transfer this to Nancy. And Nancy, all yours.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I look forward to talking with everyone, giving you some tips and tools of the trade, as they say, and hopefully you will take away from this some valuable information that will help you in all of your facilities across the country to better serve your customers, both staff and patient folks that come in to see you on a daily basis. Marsha, I am having trouble advancing slides. Marsha, the slides aren't advancing. Can you switch control over to me, please?
I'm just making sure everyone can hear us. So that's the first thing. And everyone hear us. And then I'm going to transfer to you, Nancy. Okay. Hoping everyone can hear us. And I'm going to give it back to you, Nancy. All yours.
Thank you. Hopefully everyone heard the beginning portion. We're having a bit of trouble determining if everyone is able to hear. I am Nancy Inman. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Hopefully you'll get some valuable takeaways from this today, and we will be able to move forward with some beautiful facilities out there to better serve your patient and staff needs. There's a couple things that I would like to share with you in terms of our design philosophy.
Nancy?
Yes.
1 second. I'm getting a note on my thing that I need to make sure everyone can hear us, so let me just make sure. No. Somehow, I'm just not sure. I'm sorry about the difficulties with getting started. We will now start our program. My name is Marcia Diamond, and I'm with Business Development with Alluserv. And welcome to our webinar this month on Step Up Your Retail Healthcare Food Service. And if anyone has ever wanted to have a great patient and employee experience related to retail, you've come to the right program. Today's takeaways, you will get new outlooks on how to make a difference in these retail environments. And we are lucky to have today Nancy Inman. And Nancy Inman is the principal designer with the I Group, LLC, and has been with the company since its inception. She is an Associate of Fine Arts, and she has more than 15 years experience in her field. She has worked on many types of commercial design projects, but has an exceptionally concentrated knowledge of healthcare and food service design. She's experienced in the design of educational and corporate facilities. And Mrs. Inman has served as the interior design faculty since 2002 at Watkins College. Without further ado, let me transfer the program to Mrs. Inman, Nancy, who will talk about interior design trends. We will be also writing a whole bunch of points on Twitter, and we will have a blog posted about today's program. If you have any questions, please post them, and we will get back to them. Also, as you're going through this program, if there's any particular challenges you are going through in retail, please put the questions up, and we will get back to as many as we can. Thank you, and enjoy the program. Nancy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I was so pleased when Marcia called and asked me to participate in this webinar. Healthcare and food service are the two major areas that we do projects in all across the country, and what an exciting opportunity for me to be able to talk with you guys about something I am so passionate about. I'd like to share with you for a moment some design philosophy that we at iGroup have, and it's just perfect that I'm talking to healthcare food service folks because those are our two specialties, and both types of facilities have specific needs. And for you guys in particular, the hospital cafeteria is a great example of how healthcare and restaurants come together, and you want to present a particular vibe, if you will, to the folks that come into your space. So do you want to create an exciting and vibrant retail venue? You want those folks to come back every day. You have somewhat of a captive audience with your staff, but you still want it to be a respite for them. We all know that healthcare is a very demanding, high-stress field, and everybody involved in it deserves to have a respite of their day. So I'm just showing here a couple of examples of some facilities. I have not labeled them as far as where they are intentionally. Some of the designs I did, some of them I did not. I'm simply using them as examples to show to everyone. The top picture you see, probably many of you like me, the first thing you noticed when you looked at the photograph was the red Coke machine. Well, we all know that we have to have drinks for our customers, but is that what we want our focal point of our servery to be? Probably not. If you look at the picture below that, you will see that while it's still a very subtle color scheme, the reds in there are warmer and more inviting and create a very friendly atmosphere that does not at all seem sterile, but really rather a place that people would want to spend time. Again, these are the same two, the top one is the same as the last top facility. That's the cashier area, and while it is beautiful, it's clean, it's polished, just finished completion of new construction there, it somehow just seems, like I said, sterile. However, if you look at a similar area in a different facility, again, brand new renovation, just finished. The shelves aren't even stocked at this point, as you can see. Same type of area, cashier area, but there's something about it that brings about a sense of warmth and a sense of friendliness. In talking about design, it's a little difficult to sort of just jump into it head first. So I just want to let everybody know that there are things in any design project, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, healthcare, restaurants, offices, it doesn't really matter what the facility is. There are elements and principles of design that all of us go through almost without thinking about it at this point, 15 years later, that all of these things, space and color and balance and contrast, put together are what create the atmosphere that you are trying to project to your clients. In addition to those elements and principles, there is the psychology of color. I'm not going to go through every single word on these, but certainly you can see them while I'm talking. It's probably no surprise to anybody that red is obviously the most emotionally intense color. Most of you probably also know that red stimulates the appetite. You see a lot of it in Italian restaurants. Part of that's because of the Italian, but part of it truly is because it stimulates the appetite. White, on the other hand, symbolizes innocence and purity. We see a lot of healthcare professionals that wear white. Not as much anymore, but back when I was a kid anyway, the nurse always had on white. The doctor always had on a white jacket. And that was done very specifically to imply sterility in that environment. On to blue. If you ask anybody what's your favorite color, about 70 to 80% of people will say blue. I'm not one of those 70 to 80%, but there's a whole other psychological reason that that's not my favorite color. Blue instills a feeling of calm in a lot of people, so I think that's part of why they're drawn to it. It's also been known to promote productivity in a business environment. But interesting enough, for you guys in particular, it's also been shown to cause a loss of appetite. So if you're trying to stimulate sales in your servery, in your retail area, blue is probably not going to be your accent color of choice in there. Green, no surprise, is very popular right now. It seems like every time you turn around, you hear about the environment and sustainability and going green. And along with that comes the use of green in great quantities in some areas of all kinds of facilities all across the country. That's not a bad color choice, though, because it is used for a calming effect. And you don't necessarily have to use that intense of a green that you're seeing on your screen. It can be a much warmer, more subtle sort of toned-down green, and it'll still cause some of those calming effects and remind people of sustainability and that maybe you're making some efforts in your facility to head down that road. Yellow can enhance concentration, but it can also lead to irritation and loss of temper with prolonged exposure. Now, again, much like the green, yellow can be used in different tones, more of a grayed out or subtle hue, and it can still help to get attention, but it kind of takes a more natural feel to it. Purple, of course, well, for royalty, we all know that one probably. Brown, of course, warmth, comfort, security. People think of it as an earthy color, obviously. Orange can be a very good energetic color. It creates excitement and enthusiasm, but with prolonged exposure, much like a bright yellow, can cause intense irritability. They've actually even done a study with prisoners with different colors, and orange was the one that was documented to have caused the most stress and strain amongst prisoners in a situation like that. So now that you have your quick little 101 on color psychology, there's some things that you need to be aware of if you do have an opportunity to make some changes, do some facelifts, have a renovation, or lucky you, build a new facility. One, you need to know your audience. And different facilities are going to have a different audience. Obviously, something like a children's hospital, you're going to be talking about a lot more families. The staff is going to be, one, greater in numbers probably, and very stressed out staff. It's very stressful to work with children in an environment where they are sick or they're in some sort of medical need. So you want to create a nice place for the families and the staff in any situation to be able to go and spend their mealtime relaxing. You need to choose colors and materials that enhance the mood you want to reflect. If you want it to be an exciting, vibrant place, choose colors that create that feel. If you want it to be a serene and restful place, you would choose colors to help create that feel. You also need to understand that everybody has their own sort of personal reaction to colors. I mentioned a moment ago that blue is not my favorite color, and I think a lot of that is because of being overly surrounded by blue as a child. My dad is colorblind, and blue is one of the only colors that was actually pleasing to him. So everything in our house was blue, so I think I got too big of a dose of it as a child and kind of went the opposite direction as an adult. Showing here a couple of good examples of color use setting a mood. In the picture on the top left, there is a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow in the signage that kind of pop and get your attention, which is what you want to do. You want people to come up and have their meal in your facility. Along with those, though, you'll notice that there's a couple of different wood tones, different warm browns that help create a sense of home in that venue. That particular project was one that we worked on, and it is an Army facility, and the name of that venue is Welcome Home. And the intent was to create an atmosphere where somebody could look at any portion of that and think, oh, I feel like I'm at Grandma's kitchen, or I feel like I'm at Mom's on Sunday for dinner. And that's actually the kind of food that's served out of that venue. So using color and materials pulls that feeling and draws people into that feeling. Conversely, on the bottom, there's a very strong use of red. It's a very much an attention-getting place. This happens to be a photograph of a Golden Corral, which I know seems a little odd, but it was a really good example of showing you how red really pops and gets your attention. Interesting, the laminate on the face of the counter at the bottom, if you look at it, is actually sort of a stylized digital photograph of different cuts of meat. So it's really working hard to stimulate your appetite and get you in there to eat. On the top left photograph, you see light colors, bright colors. This was a very, very small food service operation, very limited space, so we had to do everything that we could to lighten the space up, brighten it up, and still use materials that were going to withstand, you know, the rigors of being in a food service and healthcare environment. You will notice, though, that even with the light and bright, there are some wood tones in there to help warm the space up and give it a friendly feel. In the photograph on the bottom right, the orange that you see at the top is actually a copper-clad, quote-unquote, roof. That definitely gets your attention and it pulls you in. And in using the greens and blues of the tile fronts on there, it helps tone down that copper that initially pulled you in and got your attention and makes it feel like a human-friendly space. Okay, so we've talked about color and what to do with it. Maybe you painted. So now what? Very, very important to remember that safety for your staff and your guests is of the utmost importance. Nobody wants that call, Mrs. Jones fell in the cafeteria. So it's important that you know the materials that will help prevent those kinds of situations. In addition to that, we all know that this is a huge wear and tear area, and the durability of all the materials used in there is very important. The flooring, the walls, the seating, the tabletops, everything. And I'm sure all of your facility folks would tell you that ease of maintenance is the top of their list, that it really runs third on our list. Third is pretty high on a very long list of things to consider in a design project, though. Get into some real-life materials for you to use, because I want you to be able to take away from this webinar real facts, real ideas, real suggestions on what kind of materials would be good for your environment if you are able to make a change somewhere down the road. On flooring, that's probably one of the places that gets the most wear and tear, which is why I chose to review it first. In talking about the flooring, dining rooms of cafeterias can be very, very noisy places. We typically make an effort to use carpet in those areas because it does help deaden sound somewhat and helps quiet things down a bit. We do highly recommend, though, and we don't ever use anything in this area but carpet tiles. Most people are familiar with roll good carpets that would go into an office or even into your home, but there are carpet tiles, and the great thing about those is if you do get a stain that you just cannot get out, you can pop one tile in and the carpet looks brand new again. Typically when we specify a carpet tile for a project, we will suggest to the client, the owner, that you order, give or take, 5% extra of what you actually need for the project and keep it in storage for incidences where something is spilled and you just really cannot get it out of the carpet. That way you have the same die lot number and your carpet's going to look the same when you replace that one square. Another great idea is wood look vinyl. You see a sample of that on your screen. Real hardwoods are beautiful. They create this beautiful sense of warmth and hominess, and that's wonderful. But in a real-life healthcare food service setting, they are not going to hold up well. Moisture is a huge concern in any food service environment. So the wood look vinyl has come a long, long way over the last 15 years and really does a lot to warm up your space and create a friendly atmosphere. Another good idea for a hard surface flooring that's going to be maintenance friendly in terms of spills and slips both is a ceramic or a porcelain tile. You see an example of that in the top photograph on this sheet. And there are literally thousands of different patterns and colors out there. And it can create a nice warm environment in your servery. A lot of times we'll use it for pathways through the dining room where we know people are going to travel. We'll clear a space between the tables and do it with a hard surface flooring because typically when you're traveling with food, that's where your spills are going to happen and that's going to help save your carpet. I realize in this webinar we're actually talking about retail space, but as a healthcare and food service designer, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on quarry tile for just a moment. Typically, that's what you have in the back of your house, behind the serving line and back in the kitchen proper. We've had many, many, many people ask us about epoxy flooring versus quarry tile, And I'm happy to go on record saying that I will not spec anything except for quarry tile for any kind of commercial food service application. It has proven itself time and again as the absolute best product to put on your floor. Moving on to the walls, that's another area that often takes quite a beating in a food service area. You've got carts going back and forth from the kitchen to the serving line. You have people out in the servery with strollers and children and food spills, and on into the dining room with all of those same concerns. Paint is one of the primary wall coverings, obviously, that we use in the food service industry. Typically, any paint is fine on most of your walls, but be aware that there are paints that are much more heavy duty that you may want to consider using on walls that you know are going to take a lot of abuse and need a lot of scrubbing. Places like around where maybe the tray return is, something like a Scuff Master or a similar product that typically can take 20 times the scrubbing that a regular latex paint could and not show any wear. Vinyl wall covering is another great option for areas where you know you're going to need to do a lot of cleaning, and maybe you also want a big pop of color and a pop of excitement with some pattern in there. So that's certainly an option. It's a little more costly than paint, but it definitely gives you a little bit of a bang for your buck in some of those areas. In addition to those two wall coverings, there are various wall protection surfacing products that you might want to use if you have perhaps an alcove where high chairs are stacked in your dining room. If you have an area where you know your carts that you use to carry food back and forth are going to go up against a wall, we highly recommend putting some sort of hard plastic wall surfacing there to protect those walls so that maintenance isn't constantly screaming that they're having to make repairs in that area. On up to the ceiling. Again, I realize that we're talking mostly about the retail spaces, but it's important that all of you know that the ceiling tiles anywhere where you have food prep or serving going on need to be a cleanable surface. The one that's shown here is an Armstrong Clean Room Mylar. It is a scrubbable surface, and it does meet NSF standards for food prep areas. Acoustic tiles are what you typically see in an office or a hospital. There's many different kinds of those as well. That's typically what you would find in the bulk of your servery, although oftentimes we make an effort to drop a soffit over perhaps the serving line itself and the beverage area, maybe the condiment counter, and even out in the dining room to create different planes and break up an expansive space. In addition, there's decorative tiles and decorative ceiling treatments that can be used. Oftentimes you'll see these perhaps in the dining room of the facility or in an area of the servery to draw particular attention to maybe where the special of the day is served or something of that nature. The photograph that you see here, the one on the bottom left, is actually a wood plank ceiling. That's a very sustainable product as well. They offer that in a bamboo in a light and dark wood tone, so that it certainly offers some sustainability in your design as well as some warmth to the space. The bottom right picture is actually also an Armstrong, and there's several companies that make similar products where perhaps you have a two-story space in your dining room maybe, and you need to sort of humanize that area and bring it down to scale a little bit, where you know people are going to be seated constantly and it can feel very vast and cavern-like. In talking about some real-life materials to use when you do have an opportunity to make some changes or do a renovation, Furnishings, of course, is one of the big deals out in the dining room. You see at the top a photograph of a dining room in a hospital that did a renovation recently, opened about 3 months ago. And most of their customers were getting all of their food to go prior to the renovation. And once the survey was completed and the dining room was done, not only did they see over a 20% increase in their sales in the surgery after the renovation, in their beautiful new dining room, they're seeing many, many, many more people actually sit down and enjoy their lunchtime, which after all is the whole goal. Again, we want to go back to giving them that respite during their day. In the layout there, you'll notice that there is a combination of tables with what we call freestanding chairs that offer flexibility. We make a point of making sure that there is a variety of shapes and sizes, but any tables that are square or rectangular, we want at least one side to have a common size so that you can pull tables together for staff meetings that inevitably end up happening probably in your dining room, or for larger parties, or if an entire department comes and has lunch together or a meeting, they have a place to be able to do that easily, and then you can move your furniture right back to where it was and be ready for your next day of lunch. In addition to the freestanding chairs and tables, we like to provide booth seating as well. It's a great place for families to sort of corral little children, perhaps. Also a good place for impromptu meetings that may take place between a couple of nurses where they want to have a sense of privacy to have some conversation. In addition to those kinds of things, be aware that you're always going to need places for trash and recycling. Typically, we try to place those in and around the dining room and certainly at the exit, and there are many companies who make a combination cabinet like the one you see down here where you can house all of your recycling and trash in one cabinet that looks nice and coordinates well with whatever else you've got going on in your design. In talking about real-life materials, I want to mention some things that are some good bang-for-your-buck items, as I like to call them. Appropriate materials and shapes for your countertops. This is a big one for us. In any food service facility where you've got hot-cold transfer, things are hot, you turn them off, they get cold, the countertop is going to react to that thermal change, and some do better than others in that reaction. There are some countertops that have traditionally been used in hospital food service that don't perform as well because the makeup of the countertop itself is not built to withstand that kind of temperature transfer. Our recommendation is something like a quartz solid surface for any countertops where you're going to have hot wells or steam tables or anything of the sort housed within that venue. So definitely be aware of that. There's a few brand names that I can mention that are good ones to use for that. Caesar Stone, Han Stone, Cambria are all good sources for your countertops. In addition to the appropriate material, you want to think very closely about your shape of your countertop and how you can get a little more bang for your buck in terms of somebody really getting pulled in because of an unusual shape or an unusual size. If you'll notice on the photograph at the bottom, that countertop is curved on one end. Could it have been straight? Well, of course it could have, but didn't it grab your attention that it had an unusual shape to it? Curves have been proven to be more friendly and approachable in a built environment than straight lines and hard edges. So it's just another way to bring people in and make them feel comfortable within your space. In addition to counters, lighting is a great bang for your buck item. If you'll notice the photograph on the top, there are pendant fixtures over the booth seating that make those feel like special places to sit. Certainly you want to light your food appropriately, and that can be done within your food shield. You can actually place lighting in there that will enhance the appearance of the food. So lighting is definitely a very important topic. In addition to that, the use of some somewhat costly but high impact materials like a 3-form, which is a resin panel. In the photograph on the top, you see 3-form actually in the space of the window between the dining room and the corridor. So it gives people on the corridor side an opportunity to sort of get a sneak peek of what's going on the inside of that space, and it gives people on the inside of the space the feel that they're still connected to the hospital. Okay, so how do we pull all of this together? This photograph that you're looking at now is of an existing hospital cafeteria. They have tremendous business in that cafeteria. It is busy for a good 3 hours during the day. Most of you probably have an hour and a half pop in the middle of the day for lunch. These guys are busy. It seems like every time I've ever been in there, there's always people there. So this is the dining room as it sits, well, a few months ago when we were actually at the facility. And coming up next, sorry, it takes a minute for these slides to advance. This is a layout with the changes that were made in their food service department. Now, there were some changes made in the servery. There was a couple of walls that were pulled down, a couple of new venues that went in, a little coffee shop kiosk area, moving the cash registers to a different location for better security and better output of the customers as they come through. But in particular, I'd like for you to notice the dining room and how the seating layout feels much more restaurant style in there than it did in the previous slide. I'm going to zip back to the previous slide for just a moment and let you take that one in again. And then I'll go past the floor plan and let you take a look at what is a 3D rendering of what the new dining room space will feel like. And if you notice the difference in that and how it's much friendlier, it feels more wide open. Now here's the interesting part. Every table that you see in that rendering right there is an existing table that they already had in their facility. Every chair is an existing chair. We simply rearranged. In taking down a couple walls, we were able to spread things out a little bit. We actually put up a new wall in the center to help divide the space and not make it feel so vast. And I personally would much rather sit in that dining room than in the long, straight sea of tables. Much friendlier atmosphere, much more restaurant feeling. This is an example of interior materials presentation board, and it is actually for the project that you just saw, the 3D rendering of the dining room. This kind of helps show you how all these different materials that I've talked about come together to create the overall effect. Some of these areas are brand new areas that were added, new venues. Some of them are existing ones that we simply put a new face on the front of the counter and made it look very different, very new, very refreshed. Again, more of the venues. The round one that you see on the right side of your screen is a new venue, and that's a salad bar. The one to the top left is the new coffee and pastry venue, and that actually was designed in a way that it could remain open while the rest of the servery was closed, with the use of some movable walls that can be locked down and the whole servery can be closed, but customers can still come into the coffee and pastry shop and still have access to part of the dining room during non-peak hours. The only table in that dining room is that is new is the large community table that you see towards the center of the bottom of this photograph. And everything else in there was existing stuff that was just rearranged. So you got a lot of bang for your buck with that one by not having to actually buy hardly any new furniture there. Let me go through just some photos of interest and point out a couple of things in each that may give you some ideas for your own facility. This one in particular, I love that it has the curved soffit up above where the signage for the cafe is. I love that it has some interesting tile on the column. Let's face it, columns hold our buildings up, and as much as sometimes we wish we could get rid of them, we just simply can't. But what a great way to enhance something that you don't have a choice but to have, and it really helps with wayfinding. You know you're at the cafeteria, and with the style of that entry, you want to go inside and see what they have to offer in there. Another cafe entry. This is a tiny, tiny little cafe within a retirement center, and it's mostly just snacks, pastries, coffee, that kind of thing. But with the glass panel door and the signage on the outside and then the warm wood tones on the inside, it just sort of draws you right in, and you want to go in and get something. This one is a very warm feeling space. The conical shaped accents on the serving counter, the customer didn't want a tremendous amount of color and pizzazz, but because the counter was so long, we felt like it needed something to break it up. So we just created a little accent cone, but it's covered in the same laminate material and creates a very sleek look without being just bland and boring across the entire face of the counter. This is a dining room that I have always really loved. This is not a project that I worked on, but I've actually been in that dining room, and it's a very comfortable space. If you notice to the right side of the photograph, those are actual exterior windows, and the fact that they have been sort of mimicked in the center of the space through the use of the wood trim, and it really helps provide a visual breakup of the space so that, again, it's not just a sea of tables without actually physically breaking the space to the point where you can't see from one side to the other. This is actually another photograph of a dining room that you saw earlier. Again, notice the use of the wood on the ceiling and the red accent wall that helps balance the brightness of the window wall. This is a real good photograph of how the carpet tiles look on the floor. You can see in this installation that they've been turned almost in a checkerboard pattern, but with the random pattern of the carpet tiles, it sort of almost becomes just a solid pattern on the floor. But again, great for being able to replace a single tile if you have a spill that just will not come up. This is that same dining room from another perspective in the facility. And note the banquette along the wall with the tables and chairs on the other side. That's a great way to give some flexibility to your space. Those tables can be pulled together. They can be separated. On another portion of that, there's smaller tables for ones or twos to be able to sit down comfortably without taking up an entire 6-top or even a 4-top. I love the use, again, of the curves. I can't emphasize enough that curves are just so human-friendly. It's been proven that people in general are more receptive to spaces that have curves in them. and this is a very good example of that. You've got some low curved walls that create little nooks and crannies where, again, you don't have a sea of tables that's uninterrupted. I love that there's a countertop in here for singles or a couple of people to be able to sit at, again, without taking up an entire table. This is not a hospital dining room, but it was a very good example of how booth seating can be used to help separate a space as well. If you'll notice, sort of in the back part center of the photograph, there is a large banquette, and the back of that banquette actually creates the walkway where you walk up to the serving counters without actually having to build a wall. We use the furniture to sort of create that wall. And then the booths that run down the center of the space help break the dining room up, again, visually without actually creating an entire physical barrier. We've created some interesting details in the ceiling that mirror what's going on with the booths down the center of the room. And you may be surprised to know that this dining room actually seats over 500 people, which is huge. So it was very important to try to break up the space in any way that we could. But it was also important that the staff be able to view the entire dining room without having to actually walk through it. So I think we accomplished our goals, and they seem to be pretty happy there. The three-form panels that I mentioned, they were used on the wall between the seating and the corridor in another photograph. This is an example of them being used as actual doors. This space is a private dining room within a hospital cafeteria dining room. Those doors can be pushed completely to the side, and there's an 8-foot opening there where during busy times when the dining room isn't in use for meetings, it can be open for public use, and then they can be closed during meetings, and there is a separate entrance into that room, and it's easy enough to see through the space, shape and shadow if the room is in use. So that's another good bang for your buck item. I mentioned earlier about vinyl wall covering and how you can use it, one, for durability, but also for a pop of color. This is a 2-story space within a dining room. Most of the dining room is 1 story, and this little area pops up into a 2-story space. The feel of it is really fun and energetic, and putting that bold, vibrant wall covering on that wall really draws attention to the magnitude of that high feeling in there. Something we haven't touched on a great deal, but this photograph offers you a great opportunity to see some impulse item displays. You see baskets, you see little metal racks. There's things that are made to attach to the food shields where you can attach a bowl of apples or a bowl of mayonnaise packets if it's in your deli. So take advantage of those opportunities as well and use the space that you have to display your food and your impulse items in an attractive manner that's going to make people want to buy them. Also on that photograph, you see the curved countertop, which is a way to, again, humanize the space, and it actually provides you with more linear feet of serving area. This particular counter is something that has been retrofitted. The panels that you see attached to the front of the counter was a way to just give it kind of a new look, a new life, update it a bit. It's an existing counter with the 3-form resin panels, actually, I believe is what that is, or Lumicore, or one of the brand names. And they're attached with stainless pieces And you can actually go in and light those panels from behind if you want something a little more jazzy even than what that is showing. Another area of the hospital that you want to think about is places where there's an awful lot of people that may be pretty remote from your actual dining or cafeteria area. This is a kiosk in a hospital that's been open now, I guess, about 9 months, the kiosk has, and it is doing gangbuster business. They sell prepackaged sandwiches and salads out of here that they package and wrap up in the kitchen and bring over, coffees and pastries and that kind of thing. And there's seating for 15 to 20 people in there. The great thing about this particular location is it's very close to some of the medical office building, you know, where you're just coming in to go to the doctor, and also very close to the pharmacy. And because this is an Army facility, you can imagine the pharmacy is a very busy place, so it's actually done a tremendous amount of business and has really helped to up the revenue of the department overall. So keep in mind other areas of your hospital that you may be able to grow into with a kiosk. It certainly doesn't have to be on this grand of a scale. It can be something that's a 48-inch long countertop that you're serving coffee and pastries out of. But the bottom line is you're making customers happy, and if you make customers happy, they're going to come back to your space again and again. This was created for a retirement facility. Again, notice that the countertop itself is curved. Again, I can't stress enough that that's a very friendly feel. A little more costly to build, but I think you end up getting your bang for the buck out of it, as I've mentioned. This is another kiosk. The sandwiches would be served from here, coffee, fruits, danishes, that kind of thing. And again, it provides just another space in the hospital where your department can gain some revenue. I believe that's all I have for today. Feel free to type in your questions, and we'll do what we can to answer them. If you think of something later, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. So what I'd like to do is kind of look at the color and the retail and the design trends that Nancy and her group have been working with. And if you incorporate some of these things as you're looking, you get rid of some of that sterile space and create an experience. And that's kind of what we kind of hope you'll do from today, is take that experience in that. One question someone did have is, the question is, okay, a second. Our presentation, by the way, will be available online by Monday, so you'll be able to see that. How do we convince our contractor, lead architects, and interior designers to adopt this retail feel that sets our space apart, but yet still incorporates the continuity of materials in the rest of the hospital? Our architects don't want sexy curves. We do. Nancy?
Well, I guess the first question I would have to ask is, one, how does your administrator feel about it, and how much control are they giving you over your department in particular? And two, do you have an interior designer on the project that can help fight that battle for you? In the end, the food service director should be sort of in charge of their department like any other department leader would be. And I would say fight for it, because I've seen the benefits of it and what it can do for your revenue and for the experience of your customers.
Okay.
And I'm happy to talk to them. I might have just killed myself there, but I'm happy to talk to them because I do have experiences that I can share with them.
Another question is, how do we incorporate what we already have if we're not doing complete construction? What are there any tips or tricks you can let us know for the interim? I know that you're going to be doing another one on another webinar for us in the early summer about the kind of a dollar store approach for us giving them. But in the meantime, you know, maybe you can give a little bit of preview of what you'll be speaking about then. Maybe that'll help.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. One thing, of course, if you're looking for some things that'll sort of give you a little bit of a facelift if you're not ready for a full-on renovation, the countertop that I showed where the front panels had been sort of updated, even with just a new application on top of what was there, that can help. A lot of times we'll recommend that someone change out just the tray slides on the serving counters, and you can do that for a whole lot less money than changing out the entire counter, and that can give a new and updated look. You know, don't underestimate the value of a coat of paint. You know, maybe do an exciting red wall or something in a mustard yellow or whatever color works with other things that are already there, but is going to be an obvious, I'm new and I'm moving on to bigger and better things kind of statement.
Nancy, a question came up is, I did the coat of paint. Some fabrication is needed in my facility. You know, I'm working on that. But when people come through this linear trail, this linear cafeteria, all they see is steam table kind of look. What can I do in the interim before I'm given total, you know, revenue to really knock it down and build it up again? Any suggestions from an interior design point of view?
And Marcia, say that one more time. All they see is what?
You walk in, all you see is a very linear approach, and all you see is steam tables on, you know, you're walking down a hallway which has we painted the walls, we put some signage up, we put some accessories up, but all they see is a countertop with steam tables on it. Is there anything we can do?
There's always things that can be done. Some things are easier than others, and of course everything costs money. It's just a matter of how much. The paint, that's a great thing. The use of some of the countertop displays that I was talking about could be very helpful to maybe detract a little bit from the linear that you're seeing. If you have food shields, which I'm sure you do, hopefully, you can attach accessories that go to that, as I mentioned, that you can use for a bowl of apples or things like that. There's things that you can put underneath your tray slide that might help break up the space some. Possibility of changing out some flooring in some areas to create some curves on the floor if you can't create them right now on the counters. There are marketing accessories for point-of-sale purchases that you can spread out throughout your servery, where you may have a tower basket that has chips in it near your deli station. Anything that you can do to break out from that linear feel, I think, is going to help. It's sort of an interruption point is what we're talking about, something that makes it not feel so straight and linear. I hope that helps a little bit. And again, if you want to email me with that specific question, I may be able to send you some photographs of some things specifically that might help you out a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And I think it is past our time. I wanted to thank everybody for joining our webinar. Hopefully you walked away with some ideas on how to step up your retail healthcare today. And please join us on future Alluserv webinars. And please visit our website for equipment solutions that can help you with retail meal delivery. And thank you again, Nancy, for sharing your insight and education. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcia. It was my pleasure.
Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.